And so
but I do say that space can be explored without feeding the fires of war, without repeating the mistakes that man has made in extending his writ.
it's important to realise that this doesn't just depend on the technology. There's a sense that we do things in space when we have the technology. There's a lot more to it than just the technology of space. There's the economics of it, and then beyond the economics, there are these legal and political aspects. And really, space exploration won't happen, I don't think, and I certainly don't think it will happen safely and in a way that really is in the spirit of space being the province of all mankind, unless we get the political and the legal institutions right from the start.
I found that augmented reality could be a tool to communicate these excluded layers of meaning that I felt were important to include. While building the overall narrative for the book of this project, I kept thinking, what would a Latin American woman have to say about an endeavor that is mainly Western? This is when I grounded the images and myself in the mundane, the small, the everyday with its quiet mysteries. I want to be clear, this is not an attack on science or technology. I deeply admire what the human mind can do. It is incredible. But it is how sometimes these inventions, these endeavors, are used as a means to sell an agenda of growth, to sell growth as progress, as a means to convince ourselves that we are in control, and in the instances that we're not, we can gain control. This is what alarms me. So when I was allowed to enter the wonderful space facilities with their magnificent human inventions, I kept on thinking, resist these incredible objects of technical sophistication. Resist their magnificent ingenuity. Resist their monumental aspirations. But of course, sometimes I couldn't resist. What humans can do is absolutely breathtaking. And when I couldn't resist, I decided to find the other side of what progress could mean, by seeing the human, the fragile process that is discovery, the guesswork, the trials and errors that go unknown, that go unnoticed. I tried as much as I could not to see the conclusion, but rather the unanswered, see the small, no hierarchies attached. Progress as curiosity, as unanswered questions, as embracing, never quite knowing. This was what I looked to capture. The mystery, the unknown, the chaos, the out of control.
Currently, the legal regime for what countries can do in space is governed by the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, arranged under the auspices of the United Nations, and now has about 102 signatories. And the Outer Space Treaty forms the current legal basis for exploring space. And it prevents nation states from appropriating other planetary bodies. So no signatory to the treaty can land on the moon or on an asteroid and plant a flag and claim this to be theirs. Because it was written before private activities were envisaged, it's silent on what private companies can do. Now that private companies are getting interested in possibly mining the moon or asteroids, there is an ambiguity as to what the treaty will allow private companies to do, as distinct from governments. And it's quite important that this ambiguity is cleared up before these private companies really get going.
When I first wrote this, it was 2020. Now, as I read this to you all from self-isolation, 2021 is the year. I write to you with the smell of the sky and the dried winter grass, and I can't stop myself from looking at the horizon and thinking of nature as a distant surface, an envelope for our ideas of evolution, classification and perspective. I wonder when we will finally figure it out. Nature doesn't belong to us. We belong to nature, with its seashells, with its larvae, with its minute bacteria. We, the masters of the land, are no different than the virus of this pandemic when it comes to nature. The best example of this are natural disasters. We only have to watch a volcano erupting, the debris of a tsunami, or the force behind fire or a tornado to know this. In the midst of the destruction of their debris, the floating chairs, the melting houses, everything seems equal. I lived through several earthquakes in Mexico City. The bending concrete, the melting buildings, the electric cables, all dancing in chaos, and us all, whoever was caught in it, feeling like nothing, just a small part of nature. Today, on the era of anything is possible. Anything except for stopping ourselves from destroying what we have here already. It all starts with words. First, it was a global warming. Then, climate change. Then, ecological crisis. But this ecological crisis, as we call it now, isn't it more of a disaster? A collective failure? The still heads of dead animals looking back at us all hold no more meaning than the generations of humanity, of flora, of fauna, of chairs, of dust and debris. It is so important to understand that we are not at the center. We have made this mess, but we are not the masters of it all. We will all come and go with nature following its course. While all we want is to grow, to expand. Is humility more needed as opposed to growth? Are we really in control of evolution? Can we really stop ourselves? What do we need to stop ourselves? As I write this, we are in a third lockdown in England, in the midst of a pandemic, a clear result of our arrogant attitudes towards resources, towards solutions, towards our position in the universe. And this pandemic is not any more distant, or coming from the unknown distant future, from the obscure depths of nature. As I imagine you listening to this, the image that I hold of nature becomes a multiplicity of moments and stories and sounds and shapes, an overlapping of forms, an infinite chaotic dance without hierarchies.